maczko.
It started as a distant rumble over the Mediterranean. By nightfall, that rumble became a roar, and Spain's southeastern coast was drowning. On October 10, 2025, a massive storm system named Alice slammed into the region of Murcia, unleashing record-breaking rainfall that turned quiet towns into inland seas. In just a few hours, more than 6 inches of rain fell enough to flood entire neighborhoods, sweep away cars, and cut off power to thousands. Streets disappeared beneath torrents of mud and debris as rescue sirens echoed through the night. For families trapped inside their homes, it felt less like weather and more like war. This was no ordinary storm, it was a Mediterranean monster supercharged by warmer oceans and a changing climate. And as dawn broke over the flooded coast, the question wasn't just how much was lost, but how many times this will happen again.
Ay, 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 ay.
Just before midnight, the skies over Murcia turned white with lightning. What began as steady rain exploded into a downpour unlike anything locals had ever seen, nearly 3 inches of rain in less than an hour. By 12:30 a.m., storm drains overflowed. Rivers burst their banks. Neighborhoods that had stood for generations vanished beneath 5 feet of fast-moving water. In the low-lying town of San Javier, residents scrambled to their rooftops waving flashlights and cell phones for help. Families huddled together in the dark as rescue boats fought their way through flooded streets. Cars were tossed aside like toys. Power lines sparked and fell. The air smelled of salt and diesel. At 2:00 a.m., the Cazón River became a brown, roaring wall of water swallowing entire blocks as it surged toward the Mar Menor lagoon. Authorities broadcast an emergency alert, move to higher ground. Stay inside. Help is on the way. But for many, help was hours away. Through the night, the storm howled on relentless, merciless, turning a quiet Spanish coast into a scene of chaos, survival, and fear.
Això és al·lucinant.
Hi ha un altre, ara ja surten.
No, que van tots en...
Mare.
By the early hours of the morning, Murcia had become a war zone of water. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed in darkness, no power, no cell service, no way to call for help. The rain was deafening, pounding on rooftops like 1,000 drums. In Los Alcázares, police officers and firefighters waded through waist-deep water carrying children to safety in their arms. One rescuer described it as the ocean coming to our doorstep. The La Maraña ravine, swollen beyond capacity, sent a surge of 30,000 gallons of water every second toward the sea, ripping through streets, bridges, and farmland in its path. Dozens of residents were trapped on rooftops. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through the rain as rescuers guided survivors out one by one. Sports arenas turned into emergency shelters. Families sat on gym floors, wrapped in blankets, listening to the storm rage outside. By sunrise, more than 100 people had been rescued, though hundreds more remained stranded. The smell of fuel and salt filled the air. The water was rising again, and everyone knew if the rain didn't stop soon, the next few hours could mean the difference between survival and disaster.
Esta casa es una casa de 3 pisos. Ese es el olor a petróleo es lo que está bastante fuerte. Pues
coche. Ahí está.
Ese sí tiene huevos.
Meteorologists say Storm Alice was born from a perfect collision of forces, the kind of setup that turns an ordinary rainstorm into a record-breaking flood. Over the Mediterranean sea surface, temperatures were more than 3 degrees above normal, pumping vast amounts of moisture into the air. That warm, humid air collided with a cold front, drifting down from Central Europe, creating a violent mix of heat instability and trapped pressure. The result? A mesoscale convective system, a cluster of supercharged thunderstorms that refused to move. Instead of passing through, Alice stalled over southeastern Spain, dumping tropical-level rainfall for hours on end. Experts call it a rain bomb, a slow-motion disaster capable of releasing billions of gallons of water over one region. By dawn, more than 6 inches of rain had fallen across Murcia, the kind of event that statistically should happen once every 500 years. But this wasn't just bad luck. Climate scientists warn that these once-rare storms are becoming alarmingly common. Warmer oceans mean more evaporation. More evaporation means more fuel for extreme weather. As one Spanish meteorologist put it, this wasn't just a storm. It was a warning that the Mediterranean is becoming the new hurricane zone.
Mireu los coches.
Esto es Santa Pola.
Bàrbara, la intersecció amb el carrer Aire, i a banda de...
Before sunrise, Spain's Civil Protection Agency declared a national emergency. The army was deployed under Plan DN3E, the country's top disaster response protocol. Within hours, more than 200 emergency personnel, 40 vehicles, and a fleet of rescue boats were in motion across the flooded plains of Murcia. Firefighters battled currents strong enough to overturn cars. Military helicopters hovered over submerged streets, airlifting families trapped on rooftops. In Los Alcázares, soldiers carried the elderly through waist-deep water, while volunteers passed out bottled water and flashlights. Evacuation centers opened in schools and sports arenas, quickly filling with more than 1,000 displaced residents. By morning, engineers had restored power to one hospital and cleared the main access road into San Javier, allowing ambulances to move again. Still, entire neighborhoods remained unreachable. Bridges had collapsed, roads were gone, and in some communities rescuers could only navigate by boat. Through the chaos, one thing stood out. Coordination saved lives. Local police, the army, and neighbors worked side by side, often in the dark, guided only by instinct and faith. Against impossible odds, they proved that when disaster strikes, humanity still answers the call.
Mare, no, això és al·lucinant.
Hi ha un altre, allà surten.
No, que van tots en guit.
Mare, allò pareixia un riu. Però un riu. Mira!
Mireu los coches.
When the rain finally stopped, silence fell over Murcia, a heavy, muddy silence that felt almost unreal. The streets were gone, buried under layers of silt and debris. Cars lay stacked like dominoes against collapsed walls. Storefronts were gutted, their shelves floating in brown water. Preliminary reports estimated tens of millions of dollars in losses. Thousands of homes were damaged or destroyed. Bridges, roads, and power lines would take months to rebuild. For farmers, the blow was devastating. Murcia's fertile plains, known as the vegetable garden of Europe, were drowned. Citrus groves, tomato fields, and greenhouses that fed millions across the continent were left in ruins. The environmental toll was equally alarming. Floodwaters carried fertilizer oil and trash into the Mar Menor lagoon, threatening another ecological disaster in a region already scarred by pollution. Tourism, one of southern Spain's lifelines, came to a standstill. Hotels were closed, beaches destroyed, and reservations canceled. But the greatest loss couldn't be measured in money. It was the sense of security washed away overnight. For many, the question wasn't how to rebuild their homes, but whether they'd ever feel safe living here again. Storm Alice didn't just flood homes, it exposed the cracks in our modern world's defenses. Spain, like much of southern Europe, built its cities for mild winters and sunny summers, not for tropical-style downpours that now strike with terrifying speed. Murcia's drainage systems designed decades ago simply couldn't keep up. They weren't built for 6 inches of rain in a single night. The result was inevitable collapse. But as heartbreaking as it was, Alice also delivered a lesson the world can't ignore. Our planet is warming. Warmer air holds more moisture. And when that moisture is unleashed, it comes down in violent bursts, floods, not showers. Experts say adaptation must become our new survival strategy. That means stronger infrastructure, smarter urban planning, and early warning systems that reach people before the water does. The story of Murcia is part of a larger pattern from Houston to New Orleans, from Miami to Madrid. The same warning echoes climate extremes no longer respect geography. This isn't a European story or a Spanish story. It's a global one, because the next Storm Alice could happen anywhere, even here in our own backyard.
Ay, 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 ay.
As dawn broke over the coast of Murcia, the storm clouds finally cleared, revealing a landscape forever changed. From above, the city looked like a watercolor washed away by rain, mud-stained rooftops, shattered roads, and silence where life once moved. Yet, among the ruins, humanity rose. Neighbors carried one another through the wreckage. Rescue crews worked without rest. Children smiled as sunlight returned proof that even after devastation, hope still breathes. But the lesson Storm Alice left behind is bigger than any one country. The line between safety and catastrophe is vanishing. Every storm grows stronger, every flood arrives faster, and every city, no matter how advanced, is more vulnerable than we admit. Still, there's a choice: to adapt, to prepare, to fight back before the next wave comes. If this story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because awareness isn't just knowledge, it's survival. And together, we can stand stronger against the storms of tomorrow.